Peace family is 19 Keys tapping in for another episode of Coffee with Keys, brought to you by Supermind, our functional mushroom coffee. You can get this at asupermind.com. I get this and drink this every single day for a cognitive boost so I can wake up and have a conversation with you. Today's conversation that I do want to have, and I have heard you all, you say you don't like when I sip. So, how's that? Is that better? Because some of y'all was going in on the sipping. Sometimes I walk around and I walk around my neighborhood and I just think, and I just take these walks, and I was thinking to myself, today I couldn't take a walk, or yesterday rather, I couldn't take a walk because there was this what they call radiation fog. Right, I'm in California, so there was explaining that there's this radiation fog, and it stretches like 400 miles. And they said, though we're calling it radiation fog, it's not really radiation, it's like heat radiation off the ground. But then there was things saying that you still have to be careful because of the particle matter in the air. Right, it's very dangerous, and you don't want to be breathing it in. And so there's all these different reports about it, and somehow it felt normal. It's like I wasn't surprised. I'm not surprised that there's 400-mile radiation fog in California. And then out of nowhere yesterday, the winds came in. I mean, looked like a very clear day, right? Wasn't even a cold wind. It was kind of almost just regular warm. And there was extreme winds coming in, blowing in heavy. And I just stood on my balcony as I kind of just looked out, and it was just this feeling like this don't even feel real. Like it feels like somebody just turned on an air machine and was just blowing wind. And then I said, I bet tomorrow when I wake up, it's going to be a clear day finally, and the fog is going to be lifted, right? And sure enough, I woke up this morning and the sun was glowing extremely yellow, very bright. And I said, huh, just what I thought, you know. It feels like I'm in a Truman Show, that all of these things are just being manufactured and nothing is surprising anymore. There's nothing to make people so upset that they go after those people who you think are in charge of the elites. I mean, we live in a time now where we're constantly looking for scapegoats, which is each other or celebrities. But the people in power are escaping responsibility consistently. And we're now just living in a world of narratives, right? Because it's easier for people to understand narratives, right? Like you when you explaining something to a child, you typically start telling them a story because there's less resistance in the mind towards a narrative and an idea. And the world now is not competing on truth, they're competing on narratives. There's a story about how Donald Trump was talking about this guy who died, and he spoke upon him very disrespectfully, right? He basically was saying, "Good riddance, I'm glad you died." And this guy and his wife was killed allegedly by their son. And for a sitting president to do this, you would think that this would hit the news. You would think that this would go crazy, but it hits a news cycle for a day or two. People are mildly upset, but also expecting it. And then we go on about our day. This is very totalitarian, right? Very dangerous rhetoric to hear, to be seen tweeted in a time that we're living in. But it's just Donald. But it's 2025. We throw our hands in the air, and the people say, "Well, I don't have no power. What can I do about it?" You go on social media, you utilize your voice, you talk about the disdain that you have for the path that the country is taking, right? Where things are, and then things just keep going. And somehow, in the midst of automation taking away the jobs, tech billionaires, Palantir saying that we're going to essentially put you on the social credit system something that we've been talking about China doing for years, and now all of a sudden it's normal, right? BlackRock, Charles Schwab, Chase, J.P. Morgan Chase talking about tokenization of everything, and somehow it's just normal. That's the era that we're in. And I know that you're feeling it. I know you're feeling this thing in the air where you don't know what's real anymore. You can't really determine what this current time that we're living in even is. The scholars are now on social media speaking like the influencers. The influencers are speaking like the scholars. People are utilizing AI, ChatGPT to become scripted, right? Intellectuals. And everybody is starting to sound the same. There is a mass psychosis happening in the world, and it is no longer about truth. It is no longer about, politics being power anymore. The real fight in this world, and y'all give me 1 second. Make sure my light stops doing this. Excuse that break. The real fight in this world now, as we start talking politics, and I'm going to give you a definition between these three things that we have on here: this end of the world syndrome, this narrative warfare, and this political psyops. Because all of these things are very important for you to understand. Because people keep asking me to talk about politics and to just be somebody that is a political commentator that is just moving through the day and speaking on these things daily, right? It just feels meaningless to me. And I think people think it's meaningful because they don't have time to interpret reality for themselves. So I understand the want, right, for higher perspective and clarity. But you also have to understand the danger, because if you're not willing to do anything about that which you are aware of, it's only going to make you feel more powerless. Right? And a great orator can really, pull you in, right? Speak upon things in a matter of which you want to, and you get all of these likes and you get all these comments and you get this love and you get money from it, but there's no change that happens. And we're living in a very dangerous time where the new colonization is not that of land and systems, is that of your very mind. That the new political power, right, is really cognitive, to where it gets inside your thinking and it controls how you think and how you view the world and how you view yourself, meaning, identity, expression, purpose. And in the world, in the future, it's going to be two different classes, because there's going to be the thinking class, and the new educated class are now the class that is thinking for everybody else because other people don't have time to think. So they're unwitting participants in this new world economy that is now growing. Those who are of academia and intelligence, right, and intellectuals are now going to be on social media and become the commentators for the rest of the world who don't know how to think, who has been putting their mind into this AI slop, and their cognitive debt that they're taking on from allowing AI to think from them and not having real feedback systems for themselves. They will not be able to think in the future. So the academia intellectual class is going to be thinking for you, clarifying things, giving you synthesis. Then you have the people that are just going to be entertaining you, telling you stories, trying to distract you from a moment of hopelessness in a world that you feel very nihilistic about, because you're like, why should I try anything? And they're hoping that nihilism continues to spread. Why should you invest? Why should you start that stock portfolio? Why should you take another course? Why should you go to another, conference or event? Because if you tried and you feel like it hasn't worked, and this is just not true. We had this conversation the other day. I was talking on Blackout and I was explaining, right, that basically it was asking, like, is it too late? Is there anything that people can do? And that's really the most dangerous question in the world, right? And the reason I say that is because The people will always be the power unless they forget their role. The moment that the people forget their power, then they no longer have it. That's the trick. That's the goal. They just trying to get you to forget that you have the power in the first place. That has always been a secret. And so now we're at this time in society where the people have forgotten that they are the majority. The people are acting like they have to listen to somebody, that they don't have power over the things that's happening and that's being dominated in their reality. And so the moment you get to that point and you start feeling powerless, then yeah, you can't do anything. So yes, that question becomes more present in today's time when it shouldn't. The problem is that we have influence without infrastructure, right? There's people, but there's no organization. And then there's no consistency. We seen a No Kings parade and then it disappeared. And what the fuck was that for? Excuse my language. My moms don't like when I be cursing. I'm trying to move this damn screen over while I'm talking to y'all. It's a difficult task. All right, anyway, let's just forget it. So, before I get out of here, because I don't have much time, I wanted to go over just a couple of things. And one of them, of course, was, as we were just talking about, this narrative warfare. And I want you all to have the eyes to be able to see. That's why I'm speaking on this in the first place. Because for me, what I like to do is I like to get a bird's eye view of things. I don't want to be stuck looking at things from the ground because you can't get all perspectives. And that becomes the problem. You can't really see what's going on. You're only seeing it from your lens of view. And most people are only seeing the world from their lens of view, right? Most people haven't really studied the blueprint and the plans of the enemy. And then we're not making plans of our own. And that is probably the biggest issue of today. Because the moment that we stop having strategic imagination that feeds the mind, we stop believing that things are possible, then that's when they've truly won, right? The most dangerous thing has always been media, telling stories inside the mind, getting deep inside the identity of the person, beliefs and perception of reality and what they think is possible and not possible, right? A man's supposed to have three sights, and that's hindsight, insight, and foresight, the ability to see into the past, the present, and the future and gain perspective and clarity from each, right? We're supposed to be able to project ourselves into the future with futurism. That's us controlling our narratives, but we've never utilized media like that. When I was in Africa, it was hard for a lot of times for people to see you as a businessman, as an entrepreneur, as a futurist, as a thought leader. Why? Because they've been shipped an identity about who you are. There's been narrative warfare played by those who control the media, right? Which have been controlling our identities to the world. So it's easier for them to see a white man, Indian, Russian, Jew as a businessman and do business with them. But they want you to jump through hoops. And it's like, no, you need me. I don't need you. Let's deal with this relationship the way that it is. I'm not about to play those type of games. Now, I understand that you've been through a psyop, which is a psychological operation to change the way you perceive reality, change the way you perceive your brother, right? But let me show you what power is. Let me lay down what my resume is on what I've been able to do and who I am and what gives me authority and understanding in this particular thing here, right? But the narrative warfare is so sharp that you go over there, and of course, the main thing and the only lens that they really know a black man from nowadays is an entertainer. Oh, you must be an entertainer. Oh, you're traveling, you got money, you must be an entertainer. And now we're living in a time where everybody actually has to be an entertainer. You have to get people attention because attention is the economy. And it's like, damn, now we have to be figuring out ways to entertain you, to capture your attention, just to give you the value in the first place. And who wants to be competing with fools? You know, it's that old saying is that you argue with a fool, you can't tell the difference. But if you're standing on the same stage as a fool, and y'all both trying to entertain the crowd to get their attention, regardless for the intention behind it, you still start to look the same. So, narrative warfare, and y'all remember this. Narrative warfare is the war for meaning. Narrative warfare is the war for meaning. Whoever controls the story controls what feels real. Political psyops is the war for perception. Whoever controls attention controls the public mind. Then you have end of the world syndrome. End of the world syndrome is the emotional fog. It is people feel danger everywhere, so they enter freeze, you fight your neighbor, or you just follow the loudest voice. The truth no longer becomes the most important thing. Most of the time, people don't even cite sources anymore, give credit where credit is due. There's no chain of custody of knowledge anymore. There's no way to follow that. We have entered a very low level society. We are always looking for extrinsic motivation because we lack meaning and we're doing a lot of meaningless work. We've entered a point of well, not even that. I would say this. I was listening to a professor speak upon the fact that his child was had ran and got lost, and these strangers had started asking his child, right, where are your parents? And I guess the child looked like they were sick or something, right? And he was explaining that when the cops came over to the situation, right, they start questioning him and they was acting like he was in trouble because his child got lost for a second while they was out at this park. And essentially it was getting to a point where they damn near wanted to arrest him. And he said he looked over across the park and he's seen these men arguing and fighting. And he was questioning the police like, and he did this in his head, like, why are you trying to fight me or arrest me when there's people actually over there committing a real crime, right? They're fighting and arguing. And he said he got to the point of understanding that arresting him was easier, right? Actually on dealing with real crimes is harder, right? And so, of course, they're choosing the easier path. And the analogy was kind of going to as things become more bureaucratic in society and actually our problems become a little more comfortable because I think Americans are spoiled in a lot of different ways that we start doing meaningless work, right? That you start creating problems to solve in the first place. And I think that we're at this point in time where a lot of the work that people are doing feels completely meaningless, right? The problems that politicians are solving nowadays are completely meaningless. They're not solving the real problems anymore, right? They're not solving the healthcare issues, the mental health crises, the grocery prices, the real estate issues, right? The housing crisis, rather. We're not solving for those things. We're arguing about rights and sexual identities and narratives that don't even matter or mean anything. That's the low hanging fruit. You're not going after the real crimes, the real issues of humanity anymore. And we're now in this deep moral crisis of society because when you stop following the truth, there is no more God. God has left America. And I get that people are going deep into their church bag, right? We're seeing this extreme movement of people entering the church because they're looking for identity and community. We're seeing people enter the mosque. They're looking for identity and community. This happens as a cycle in society each time. The only problem is that each mosque is not the same. Each church is not the same. Some of these are still houses of Satan. And by Satan, I mean collective forces of people who do evil and bad. You got his religion. When people, we call it Islam. Somebody take Islam and they use it for their way. And we know that there's so many different sects of Christianity. I don't even know what it is anymore. Like it's honestly, it's confusing. You can put a whole encyclopedia together for just the different types of Christianity, the different stories, the different books, the different types of pastors. It's just too much. It's more confusion. It's not bringing clarity. People have started overdiagnosing themselves with mental health issues and mental health speak, but we haven't seen the numbers drop because we're doing the meaningless work. We're not actually focused on building parallel societies, parallel worlds, restructuring infrastructure, creating brand new systems, architecting new ways to think, right? Coming up with completely new education models, focus on building technology, right, that actually has a benefit for society, solving the real problems that's going on in the world. We've been focusing on the meaningless too much. And the thing is, what we have to do is we have to tell ourselves, I believe, a new story. I believe media is the most powerful. You know, I wake up in the morning and I do these to get some thought off, just to get us thinking throughout the day, right? And what you realize is that, and the reason I have this black and white, right? Because we're overstimulated, right? And in some ways, we're understimulated. And that's a different conversation for a different time. But I don't want it to be scroll stopping, right? We need to be able to practice low stimulation so that we can reset our brains, so that we can actually take in information that's required our brain to focus, that executive function of the brain to activate. But if we always need high stimulation, we always need some B-roll on here, we need music in the background, we need popping colors, we need this, you will never develop the type of mind that will be successful in the future, because it's going to require a mind that is clear, that can still think, that can still focus on long form tasks and get things done, that can manage itself over time. But if you need things to be extra stimulated at all times, your brain is not your own anymore. Now, again, the reason you need to understand narrative warfare, because a narrative is a meaning machine. It does four things. It explains what matters. It explains why it matters. It tells you who the hero is, and it tells you who the enemy is. If you can control those four, then you can steer your emotions. They can steer your votes without actually having to touch your logic. This is why misinformation is is not only the wrong facts, rather, it's competing meaning. The US environment is an environment of truth decay. The standard for truth has weakened. The polarization has risen. And people are struggling to even agree on what's real. You argue with a bot, you like a picture of an AI thought. What is life? The narrative warfare is the controlling story that exists in your mind about what reality is. Who is really the enemy here? Who is really the hero here? If they can get that story in your mind, then they started persuading what matters to you and what means something to you. Now they start controlling and going deeper into cognitive warfare that controls how you think. And if I can control how you think, then I control what you think. And that gives me neocortical colonization. Well, we've colonized the neocortex in the mind itself. Now, if that's not dangerous, then I don't know what is. Now, political psyops. Political psyops is not just a governing thing. In 2025, a psyops is also the platform incentives. It's the influencer economics. It's the campaign micro targeting and the algorithmic amplification of things, right? Netanyahu said that social media is the most important place for warfare, right? They gather all the influencers together. They give them the script. They give them the talking points. They tell them what to say. If you want to know a psyop, look for repeated patterns and speaking points. When you see everybody saying the same thing, it's automatically a psyop. And really the only way to start going against this is hypervigilance. To believe that it's a psyop in the first place. To believe that it's trying to manipulate your mind. Hold on, I'm getting a call. I'm gonna put this on. Tap in. It's God himself. Who the hell is this? 1 second, y'all. My brother, I'm live right now. I'll let you know, black guy. This your number? All right. Peace to the black guy. That's the famous man. Pooh Bashir, man, Mr. I-10. That's my younger brother, man. I ain't talked to him in a minute. Gotta answer for family, man. Data collection. Now let's go into how modern politics influence is built like now, because you got to be able to notice this. Once you notice this, you can start freeing your own mind, right? But you're going to also need to be hyper vigilant, be careful of the fact that everything on social now is trying to influence you. And you have to ask why. Why is this information presented this way, right? Who benefits from this information, right? If you can start questioning things in your head, and I know it takes deliberate thinking and it takes thinking power. Otherwise, just stay off social, because overconsumption kills imagination. And that's another video for another day. But in a modern influence, right, data collection, they're taking data collection and they building a behavior model for you. That's number one. Number two is they're targeting, right, to find your fears and your desires, right? If you go study Edward Bernays, then you can understand the dark psychology behind studying people's fears and desires. The way they was able to get feminism started in America is because they pushed it through this desire of the cigarette, right? They created a campaign that connected women's rights to cigarettes, and the cigarette became what they call the woman's penis, right? Literally, that white cigarette, right, was lit, and it became the extension of their power. And Edward Bernays, a man, he studied Freud's psychology and he used it to try to control people through desires, implanting these desires. Instead of figuring out what you want, they started shaping your dark desires. And ever since then, they've been mastering these techniques and this power for a very long time. And we become unwitting participants that have more desires than ever, which is why we need more discipline than ever. But if you decrease the amount of desire, then you don't need more discipline. That's why fasting and detoxing, right, from things is very important, because those desires become parasites, because you can never fulfill yourself, right? And that's when you get addictions and afflictions. And they know how to control you through your fears and desires. Number three, they have messaging that hits you with identity language, not policy language, right? They're speaking towards who you are. They don't really care about the policy language because people are not thinking anymore. It's just the stories that they're telling, right? Are you a white man, black man, woman, straight, right, gay? They're getting into identity, right? Going directly into that part of the brain that actually means something to you. And you will make decisions, right, that may not be a good policy, but it connects to your identity. So you feel like you should do it anyway. Then you go into number four, which is repetition. It makes it feel like common sense, saying it over and over and over and over again until it becomes a normal, right? Then we have five, which is social proof. Now, this social proof makes you defend it as my side versus their side, right? So now you're arguing online with your neighbor that should be your comrade in this war against the elites. See, we looking side to side fighting when it should be up. This is a class situation. Politics is dead. Now, let's get into this last part. The end of the world syndrome. I'm not sure why we're clicking like this. Y'all give me a second. I've been trying to figure out why this thing been clicking for a minute. I had my tech team come over here and we did not figure this out yet. Are y'all still following me? We still here. Can I finish off this last point? Yeah, I mean, put a yes in the chat. Let me make sure I still got your attentions. I don't want to be talking and I ain't got your attentions. Make sure that we over here participating. Yeah, we locked in. Okay, good. You know, I get to flowing. I don't want to just be in here flowing and y'all not there with me. You feel me? I suggest while you're listening to this, you really want to find you some classical music or something. I'm gonna put together y'all a playlist. You feel me? Of like you want some nice classical music in the background. You feel me? While you listening, let me see if I can find some. You want a vibe. That's what you want. You want a vibe in the background. Some classical music though, something that's gonna help you. You feel me? Allow your thoughts to just stream. Okay, y'all here with it. All right, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna play my little playlist I put on in the morning. I wake up to this. I'm gonna just have it slightly in the background for y'all. All right, now let's get back into it. So let's get back into this part, the end of the world syndrome. Now this, it says the feeling in the air has a name in psychology. It's called existential anxiety, right? It's the intolerance of uncertainty, right? It's the doom scrolling loops of consistent uncertainty, not knowing what's next, which produces this anxiety. This anxiety then makes you want to feel better than you currently feel. And so you start seeking the dopamine. And the dopamine is you're constantly looking for something, right? And that's where the doom scrolling loops happen in. And this is why the behavior that you have is the way you have right now. You're trying to entertain yourself out of the distraction from the anxiety of this pending feeling of not knowing what's happened, this existential anxiety that you have no control over the world, yet the world is still happening. Now we have the research finds that doom scrolling is associated with psychological distress, well being problems, and recent work links it to anxiety traits and intolerance of uncertainty patterns. Our mind wants to know what's happened. We want to know a rhythm. This is survival. When we don't know what's happening, we cannot rest. We're in a constant state of fright or flight. When mortality is psychologically close, people become more defensive of their worldview and more attracted to strong identity signaling. Terror management theory, right, is a research and meta-analysis that shows that mortality salience can shift political attitudes and internal worldview defense, meaning that the worldview that you have, you start defending that more stronger and stronger and stronger, right? The more that you have this pending doom. And so you start looking for strong identity signals, people that's telling you and reinforcing who you are, because it's the only thing that you actually have to stand on. It's the only power you have left in the world. It becomes identity. Who you are. And so now the man, the woman, the gay, the straight, the Democrat, the Republican, the liberal, right? The far right, the far left. You understand me? The black, the Hebrew, the Muslim, the Christian, the Catholic, right? The Buddhist, the spiritualist, the atheist. These identities become huge now because it's the one thing you have power over, which is your internal story. It has the most meaning to you. So as things become more pending doom, you start hanging on to these things more and more and look for stronger personalities that connect you to those things, which is why you see a Nick Fuentes, you see a Candace Owens, you see a Andrew Tate, right? These become characters that have strong personality pools that are polarizing, that signal identity that people hang on to. So anybody that might be giving you truth and may giving it to you in a logical way that's not utilizing these psychological triggers, they may be the exact person you need to listen to, but you're not, because they're not utilizing the dark manipulation tactics during a time of existential anxiety. So the question that I had, has there ever been a time like this? Because if you want to know the future, study the past. And the answer is yes, right? First, let's look at the 1930s. You got the Cold War, you got the printing press era, right? And then we're going to go into the indigenous understanding, which is like the Hopi prophecy, right? So in the printing press era, there was more pamphlets, propaganda. Europe went through narrative fragmentation and the information warfare around Reformation. There was a period that was often used as a historical parallel for how new media can accelerate conflict and confusion. And so the current new media, of course, you have social media, the rise of social media influencers, but the rise of social media influencers getting paid by the state, right, to push particular narratives that then accelerate conflict and confusion. And not just those getting paid by the state, but getting paid by outside foreign interests as well. Right. So now this is why there's so much conflict and confusion, because social media is the new printing press. Then you had the 1930s mass propaganda era, where propaganda fused modern media with the identity target and emotional conditioning, right? It shaped public opinion, and that started to scale. Then you had the Holocaust museums, right? Overview of Nazi propaganda. It highlights how modern technology and sophisticated advertising techniques were used to shape behavior and normalize persecution. Well, that was what the Holocaust Museum overview did, because they were pushing their own propaganda during that time. But the Nazis had mastered this. Stalin had mastered this in the early 1900s, and we're just getting back to that. When they say make America great again, they're talking about these periods in time when they had this mass influence over the population. But in the times of confusions or time of confusion, right, this psychopathic elites rule. They create the confusion, but they're not a part of it. They're ruling the masses while they continue to stay in the higher realm. Because for them, it's all about power. And as long as power can maintain power, then it's successful. Then, of course, you had Cold War. Same structure every time, right? It is an expansion of the media. The people start to have uncertainty. The trust starts to erode. And then narrative warfare, connected to identity, meaning, purpose. Same thing happens all over again. Now, if we're looking at this from an indigenous perspective, the Hopi people always talked about, which is an Native American indigenous tribe that was putting out a lot of prophecies. And they said that a cycle ends when humans lose balance, lose humility, and break relationship with land, truth, and responsibility. Then a purification comes, which is another way of saying reality forces correction. That we veer so far off from having harmony, right? That there must be a cleansing. And so there is a correction that has to take place in this world, right? We have a lot of immoral technology, we have a lot of dirty technology, right? And unless we start getting back and living in harmony with the universe, because you can think about it in your own life, when you're not living in harmony, what happens? You start getting sick. When you get sick, your immune system is trying to flush out, right, disease and things that should not be there, right? You create cancer within your body, which is trying to kill cells within your body. This is an unhealthy state, and this can actually kill you. right? When you get a fever, what happens? Your body heats up to a point where the viruses cannot survive. That's why you know, actually, when you get to the point where you get hot from being sick and you check the forehead and you get completely hot and you start sweating, this is a purification process because you have been living or something happened within the body that the body now needs to react. The immune system needs to activate for correction. So during this time, you need to learn how to guard your attention, guard it like wealth. No waking up to the feed, number one. No doom scrolling at night. You have one scheduled time that you watch the news. You replace your scrolling time with creative time, time where you're creating instead of consuming. I'll do a video on what happens with the mind when it consumes more than it creates. And the problem with current society is the fact that we have all the creative tools, but we're utilizing these tools for consumption instead. And it is killing the part of the brain because there's two parts of the brain that activates for input and output. And that output part of the brain is actually cut off when we're overconsumed. So we can't use the tools for creation because we're not getting enough time to even think, to process, to come up with creative thought and imagination. And so we're in this consistent scrolling loop to where you know you should be creating. You know, with all the access to all of these new tools and technology, that you had an idea at one point in time in life that you would have loved this access that you currently have now to produce. I mean, we're in the golden age of social media where anybody can go viral, but what is your willfulness? What does it even mean to you anymore? What does it even matter? Do you even have the clarity, the capacity? If you don't have capacity, then there is no building wealth in the future. There is no getting rich. You know what I mean? You might as well give up your money dreams. So capacity and clarity matters during this time, right? Learning how to learn matters during this time. Developing a supermind that can have clear capacity and also operate right in harmony with the machine. Then you need to know what's truth because when the brain is no longer connected to truth, your anxiety will continue to spike. Things become meaningless. You start doing meaningless things. You need to have a clear compass in life. Once that compass is off, it's like if the magnetic poles of the earth shifted and they just miswobbled and you got a compass trying to figure out where to go, now you become lost. And you just do anything because you start giving up that you will ever get to the correct destination. So find you a primary source for everything. Always check credentials and sources. Look for independent confirmation for everything. Question the why at all times, right? That's number three. Do your incentive check. Ask who benefits if I believe this. Why do I believe this? Study metacognition, the thinking about thinking. It's one of the highest human skill sets. This is how you start course correcting yourself and you have some level of personal filter, right? That is um, a level of consciousness, right, within your own life because it is very easy for you to get robbed. There's some other things I don't have time to go in because we have 44 minutes. I will put this inside of our Patreon. And so people will be able to go over those notes. Now, if you want to replace doom scrolling with something, I have a few books that you can read. Of course, y'all know that this segment right here is for the people that make it to the end. So we have a AI prompt book that you can utilize, and we're going to be updating this prompt book. We have AI Mastery that we did, which was a $2,500 class that we did that helped people create 6 to 7 figure AI companies, right? You don't want to be lost in it. You want to be learning during this time. That is the best possible thing you can be doing is learning, right? Learning, 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 right? Cut off the consumer mind, start learning, and you start seeing your life change. You have to protect your mind like it is protecting your money. Protect your attentions and your intentions that produces new actions. Learning how to learn is one of the best skill sets that you can learn. This is a skill set that allow you to have consistent growth forever, right? Some of you all still don't understand the new money models of the future, token economics, right? Tokenomics is the study of how cryptocurrency works, right? Through reward and behavior punishment. And this was started by different psychologists and scientists. Once you understand it, what platforms to use, understanding crypto, how to find it on your own. Again, the goal is to have it when you're ready to pick it up, right? When we first put out this was the Infinite Wealth Strategies pack that we gave out. And that one was 444, and it was over the course of 6 weeks, right? Within that, we also was teaching people how to create your books, right? How to become an author in a couple of weeks, which is really getting into strategies of digital products, right? Soon, we're going to be releasing our Thought Leader Challenge, which is giving you the cognitive wealth keys. But this is your beginner pack. Instead of charging you for each one of these things, 2,500 here, 500 here, 400 here, you all can get access to that right now for $44. You're going to get 3 ebooks. You're going to get the courses that are in there, right? And so it's full access, unlimited. You can use it as you wish. You can share it with somebody else, but more importantly, start studying, right? The problem is that this overconsumption and this doom scrolling is stealing your life, and the life that you could have is on the other side of that. And unless you start making switches and habits before 2026, then your next year will be the same as this one. But I don't know why we punish ourselves so much. And when we think about the decisions that we make, why do we continue to make the same ones when we know that they hurting us? They hurting our families, they hurting our opportunities of the future. And we just have this inability to just get started now. Stop waiting and stop wishing and stop hoping and just do. Like, we talk about the narrative warfare because it also goes into the narratives that you tell yourself. How many of you all are waking up and telling yourself the narrative of what's possible in your life, about who you are? Who's the hero in your life? Is it you, or is it an external savior that you're looking for? Who's the enemy in your life? Is it your habits, right? Or is it this boogeyman that you've named when really it's in your own mind, right? And that ability to be able to tell yourself the correct story so you start getting the right results is key. 1 second. I don't like this bill right here. There we go. Now I'm gonna listen to a little bit of classical music. I'm gonna meditate the rest of the day. I'm gonna read some of these books, and I'm gonna see some of y'all in Patreon. I think that there's going to be great opportunities for creators going in 2026, but only for those who build, only for those who have clarity, only for those who really develop their mind. You know, there was ancient mystery schools back in Egypt, man, and or really Kemet, and it was a reason why they created such great thinkers because education was different back then, right? It was really modeled in understanding the cosmic thinker, that one that can align and develop their mind at a higher level. They would learn how to hold vast information, right? They would study astronomy, the sciences. Like, the Renaissance age of what happened as far as the way people are developing their consciousness is very bad. Like we stopped learning how to learn. We stopped really understanding our mind. We stopped with conscious activation, and we've just been consuming slop. And this is why it's hard for me to talk to people. Like I am a person that really hates meaningless conversation. So small talk kills my mind. I'd rather be sitting learning. I'd rather be going into deep synthesis of thought. I'd rather be treating the time that we living in like it is a serious time, but at the same time enjoying the life that I'm living. But learning is the fastest way to add value to yourself. So if you're not learning, then you're not growing. And if you're not growing, you're not really living. And there's so many people that's not really growing in life, they're just surviving life. Like your whole personality is built out of survival. You think it's the real you, but it's not the real you. You haven't even had the opportunity to experience the real you yet. The real you is waiting for you to get out of survival. And you can't get out of that until you actually have more time control. And you can't control your time until you can control your money, which controls your bills. Because as long as that the bills are pending, oh, I gotta pay this next week, all your decisions are made within a week. So therefore, Keys talking about get a bundle and learn this, that, and the third. You can't feel the future because there's a pending doom always. There's always a crisis of now. So the goal to start switching reality is to not consistently live in the frequency that you're stuck in. Assume a different frequency. Assume you have the time. The law of assumption is very powerful. The things we assume become reality. So studying these laws of the universe shifts reality. And we don't get enough into these conversations. We start talking about all these weak ass politics and things of that nature. Man, we got to get deeper into the mind, into the consciousness of the human being, back into the God power, back into the metaphysics of this world. Because these people that's running shit, they get into the deep occult practices. I had recorded something that I've not released yet. It's called Brand Consciousness. And it's a psychological, metaphysical, and occult overview of how I build a brand. I mean, it gets deep into secrets that I've never divulged and shared. And no, that's not available yet. But as I was doing it, I was just thinking about the power that comes with it. Right. And I was thinking about myself and how when I first started studying this stuff, I was like, wow, I was really going deep into this. I mean, just diving in. And at some point in time, I got so busy that I stopped diving in, right? I stopped learning the same things. We start going into more practical things, right? Because the world, I feel like the world had not caught up and it had not reorganized itself to appreciate the information that I was given. And so I said, let me hoard this to myself. And then I had a dream and not on some Martin Luther King shit, but I did have a dream. And in that dream, I was told by a figure that I respect, it said, give them the keys. I had a spiritual, deep experience, and they said, give them the keys. And I was like, what the hell that mean? Like, I thought I'm already delivering enough information and knowledge. And it was like, no, you've been holding back. And so now I'm at this point where I'm just ready to share and give all the keys and to die empty. The concept of dying empty is the most beautiful one because we often live a life where we have so much to give, but we don't. We hold on to so many things, and therefore you end up getting to the end of life with so many regrets. Die empty. Give all that you can in this life, all the things that you want to do. So that's the time I have to today. No, there's not physical books in this bundle, but if you would like to get a physical book, you can go here. That's where you can find the physical book at. So don't worry. You can always go to crowns19.com for the physical book. So putting together a lot of new things. I hope that you all enjoyed these Coffee with Keys conversations, and make sure you go to asupermind.com and enjoy some of this great mushroom functional coffee, which is basically superfood for your brain and your cognitive function for the day. Peace to the family. Peace